Audrey is the creation of one of the most revered and famous chefs of the South, Sean Brock. The restaurant may also very well be the best in Nashville. One of the establishment's offerings is a sort of tasting menu called The Feast, which I had to have, and it was epic. It's kind of a sad day. My trip to Nashville is at an end. I'm at Nashville's airport and I'm about to board a plane back to NYC, but this visit to this city has been amazing. The sights I saw, the people I met, the times I had, and the food was amazing. And I really ended this trip on a high note. Last night's dinner was one of the best meals I had this entire year. I went to Sean Brock's flagship restaurant, Audrey. So with this trip, I really wanted to go to at least one fine dining restaurant, and I thought about going to Husk, which is one of Nashville's best restaurants. But I went to Husk last year in Savannah, and I loved that. If I had more time, I would have definitely gone to Nashville's Husk. But I certainly don't regret last night's dining decision. Audrey was absolutely amazing. Some of the food I've had there was like nothing I've ever had before. It was so good. It was such a great deal. And I just had such a great time at Audrey. Audrey is located in East Nashville's McFerrin Park. It opened its doors in 2021 and is housed in a beautiful, large modern structure that also serves as the home for one of Brock's other restaurants, June. The name Audrey comes from Brock's grandmother, Audrey, who served as one of his most notable inspirations in regards to cooking and food. So far, Brock has had a successful culinary career, which has included winning multiple James Beard Awards, writing a New York Times best-selling cookbook, and he even hosted the second season of the show Mind of a Chef, and was featured on Netflix's Chef's Table. Husk in Charleston, South Carolina was one of the restaurants that put Brock on the map. Husk even expanded to other cities like Nashville and Savannah, Georgia, where I once enjoyed an incredible meal. Nowadays, Brock is devoted to Audrey, which he says is the restaurant he wants to spend the rest of his life cooking at. After I was seated, I took in the space, which has a nice modern design with an open kitchen and felt warm and inviting. I also appreciated the fact that there was an outlet right next to my seat. After exploring Nashville for the day, my phone was in need of a charging. I next looked over the menu, which features Southern and Appalachian cuisine. There's a good-looking a la carte section, but I was mostly interested in what the restaurant calls the Feast. It's somewhat similar to a tasting menu, but a lot of the dishes are served at once family style in waves. My server warned me that it was a lot of food, and he wasn't kidding. I next went over the beverage list, which was nicely organized on a tablet. There was a decent selection of wine, but I opted for a cocktail. I chose the Whiskey and Warmth, which contains Takatsura pure malt, Tawny port, Alabama figs, and ancho. It was a decent cocktail, although I wish that the flavors were a little stronger. Nevertheless, it was a solid drink. Soon after ordering, I was presented with the first wave of food, and it became immediately apparent why it's called the Feast. Simply put, a mouth-watering assortment of culinary delights graced my table, and I couldn't wait to dig in. I started off by trying the bread, which was a skillet of Anson Mills blue cornbread paired with sour corn butter topped with cracklins. I first added some of the butter, which was incredibly smooth, and took my first bite. It was amazing. Paired with the butter, it was a 10 out of 10. By itself, the cornbread was warm and fresh with a fantastic flavor, but the butter took it to a heavenly level. The cracklins added a nice textural component as well as a pop of salt. All around, that was one of the best bread dishes that I've had in a while. And even though it was a large portion, I had no problem finishing the entire skillet. Next, I turned my attention to the beautiful plate of shaved country ham topped with peanuts, Steen's cane syrup, and dried Appalachian berries. The ham was wonderful and clearly of a good quality, but the components topping the ham lent even more pleasant flavors. The sweet cane syrup was a wonderful contrast to the salty and fatty meat. And speaking of contrast, the third dish on the table was just that to the ham. It was a bowl of fried apples with toasted Anson Mills buckwheat, yuzu, and sorrel. Just like everything else on the table, the apples were incredible. They were perfectly cooked and had a nice, balanced flavor. My server even recommended trying the apples topped with a bit of the ham, which indeed proved to be a great combination. So far, I was incredibly impressed with Audrey and was also a bit concerned that I might have trouble finishing everything. Earlier in the day, I had a nice lunch of a half of a hot fried chicken with 2 sides at Hattie B's. While I don't consider that to be a large meal for me, it certainly wasn't a light lunch either. Most of the time when I enjoy fine dining restaurant tasting menus, I'm never left stuffed. That definitely wasn't the case with Audrey. After finishing everything in the first wave, it was on to the second, which involved another delightful spread of food. First, I tried the grilled skewer of lamb belly and sweet potato with pawpaw and lavage. The lamb belly was outstanding. It was fireworks in my mouth. It was tender and luscious and paired so well with the sauce. The sweet potato on the skewer was a hit as well. I just wish that there was more of those little bites of lamb and sweet potato because they were just so spectacular. Next, I turned my attention towards the salad, which contained killed lettuce and onion, sorghum vinegar, hot country ham fat that was poured tableside, and the tears of vegetarians. Okay, there were no vegetarian tears, but the hot country ham fat completely eliminated the chance that the dish would be vegetarian friendly, hence why it's called killed lettuce. Overall, it was a delightful salad with fresh ingredients, and I loved the richness the ham fat provided the vegetables. In fact, I now believe ham fat should command a space in the salad dressing aisle at one's local grocery store. Finally, I tried the cherokee white grits with a sorghum cured egg yolk and bay laurel. Like a lot of what I had that evening, the grits were outstanding. The flavor was remarkable and the texture was spot on. Simply put, I loved that dish. In summation, the second wave of food was even better than the first. It was now time to move on to the main course, which was up to me to select. I also had to choose what I would term as a side to pair with the main. Unfortunately, I have no idea what the hell I was thinking when I made my decision. I chose 2 fried dishes, resulting in flavors and textures that were far too similar. Thankfully, at least both of the plates were pretty good. For my main, I went with the pan-fried catfish with turnip greens, ground nuts, and horseradish. The fish was great. In fact, I've never had a fried catfish so elegantly prepared. It was light and delicate on the inside with a crispy fried exterior. The sauce proved to be a nice complement, while the turnip greens were a welcome addition to the plate. Overall, it was a great main course, but it was just too similar to my side. But once again, this was no fault of the restaurant, but rather my poor decision making. Regardless, on its own, my side was still pretty good. I chose the cornmeal fried okra with staghorn sumac, eggplant, and benet seed. It was a solid dish. The breading had good flavor, the okra was tender, and the sauce on the plate provided another good flavor. Overall, the third wave was nice. The food definitely hit all the marks, but I'm sure I would have enjoyed it even more if I replaced one of the dishes I had with something that wasn't fried. After finishing, it was time for dessert. Now, officially, there was a lone dessert for the feast menu, an apple cobbler, but since I was alone, my server allowed me to choose any dessert I wanted. The other sweet offerings sounded great, but I saw that the apple cobbler was meant to serve 2 people and had the highest price tag, so I went with that with the intention to get the most for my money. Plus, I love a good apple cobbler. It was presented in a skillet and the dish looked wonderful. The course consisted of a cornmeal cake and a brown sugar crumb. Alongside the cobbler was a scoop of vanilla bean ice cream. My first bite was magical. I knew instantly that I was consuming the best apple cobbler of my life. The flavors were perfectly balanced and the textures were spot on. Combined with the ice cream, it was flawless. However, that was a measly ice cream scoop that was disproportional to the size of the cobbler. While if the dessert was shared among 2 people like it was intended, I wondered if more ice cream would have been served, since a pair of diners fighting over the little scoop I was given just seems absurd. Nevertheless, I loved that dish. It was just so comforting. It's the type of cobbler that one fantasizes about and was the ideal ending to a truly great meal. After finishing, it was time for the bill, which totaled to $129.28, but with my tip, I spent about $155. To me, it was so worth it. Like I said before, I hardly ever get filled up with fine dining tasting menus, and I was absolutely stuffed with some truly great food. However, I did have this dinner a while ago, and currently the feast could be had for even less at only $75. Although the menu doesn't seem to be as expansive as what I had, it still seems to be a great deal. In summation, my dinner at Audrey was top notch and was one of the best and most memorable meals that I've had in a while. Damn, that was so good and filling too. It's not often that I go to a fine dining restaurant and leave with a full stomach. That was just such an all-around awesome experience. I just love what Sean Brock and the team is doing at Audrey. The food there is just not food that I see very often. He's taking Southern cuisine to a whole new level that people really aren't even approaching. Now, I love New York City, and I think it's hands down the best city in the country when it comes to dining in terms of quality and variety. But there really isn't any restaurant in the city that comes close to what Audrey is doing. There's no question, Audrey is one of the best restaurants in Nashville. It's probably one of the best restaurants in the entire South. It is so good. It's an absolute dining destination restaurant. My food was absolutely fantastic. It was one of the best meals I had this entire year, and yeah, I loved it. But now it's about time for me to board my flight back to New York. This trip has been amazing. Like I said, the food, the sights, the people, the experiences I had have been amazing. I will definitely be back to Nashville one day, and Audrey is a phenomenal restaurant for sure. And I will certainly be visiting Audrey again.